Hey guys, let's start with the stores part today, where I'm going to show you how to create stores. I have a schematic which is available. So even before that, we in the last episode we had seen how to create different users and associate roles to them. Like every user getting onboarded is going to be a customer, but then every other user that you're going to have, let's say, which the system needs, like a super admin, a system admin. And today we are going to see how to have these store owners role associated and those users creating new stores for themselves. And store owners needs to have the access to their stores. Maybe they can view individually their stores, or even update their stores, and maybe if needed they can even delete their stores. So that's the flexibility we are giving in this within the system. And this episode is more going to be focused around the specific stores management. So let's do that. So if you can see the schematic which I have created to just give an overview of what goes on, we have a user who's logging in, who's having an association as a store owner. He can create n number of stores within the system. That's the reason I have a one-to-one mapping against the store owner. So he can create n number of stores. Maybe as an example, I might be creating a store called Vicious Superstore today, and every store can have different brands created, or at least if let's say I'm having a store, I can have multiple brands within that store. So that's what I'm bringing in here as a one-to-one mapping for a store of number of brands that you can include. So that is another thing we might be taking up in the upcoming episode, but then today focus is going to be around the stores. And within different brands there can be different product lines. Let's say you can go to a store to buy formal shoes, formal shirts, maybe t-shirts or anything. Those will be coming under product lines. And then we are having those different products. So let's say the specific shoes that you want to buy, but then it can be for men, women, unisex, or it can be a different thing, like a lifestyle product, like different cosmetics, or maybe an iPhone. So those are the different products coming under different categories that will have a one-to-one mapping. That's how I have created it. Then you have the stock keeping units, which are to really track the different sizes, or the different kinds of variations available within a product. Let's say if you're going to buy a shoe, it can be of different sizes based on maybe 7, 8, or 9, or these are coming under the SKUs. So even you need to map that. And then you finally have this stock management, where you have different SKUs mapped against. You need to also keep track of the stock of the item, whether it is available or not. So that is going to get tracked against the stock keeping units at that level. So this is the overall design that we're going to have within the system for, let's say, managing a store. So today let's focus on creating stores. So for that, let's get started, and I'm going to create the first resource needed for doing that. So for that, let me open up the terminal, and let's create a model for the stores. So for that, I'm going to create all of the resources needed to get started with, for let's say, stores. So for that, I'm going to start with PHP artisan make model store, and then I'm going to include all of the dependent, or all of the relevant dependencies needed to get created. Let's say the controllers and all the policies, migrations, seeders, factories, and everything get created with this A. And then I am looking for only the API part of it. I'm not interested in creating the website or the web of it. So it's just going to be the API controllers which is going to get created. So after I do this, it's going to create the model is successfully created. Then I have the factory migration is created. I need that. And then the seeders, I might not use these request response and the policy. Rest of the things I'm going to use. So that's what is already created. I can go and check those, whether those are already created or not. So to start with, let me go to the app, HTTP, controllers, and you can see that there is a store created, which it just has the definition of all the functions needed, all the APIs: index, store, show, update, and destroy. And then I also have the request created. I'm not going to use that, which is store request, store response. All of that, I might just, maybe I can already change those into the basic request. So I can just say request object, which is basically nothing but illuminate HTTP request. So even these, I'm just going to use the ID of the resource instead of the object itself, instead of the resource itself. And then maybe also modify this one with request, illuminate HTTP request. And then this again will be an ID which I'm interested in. If let's say I go ahead and update something, I'm just going to only use the ID. And finally, to destroy a store, I might just use an ID. So these are the things I right now need to get started. But then let's go back to all the other things which are created. I also need to go to my models and see whether my model is created. I have a store model already created, but it does not have much. So all of that gets started with our the other part, which is our database. Let me go to the database and see the migration which is created. So we have the migration as one thing created. The stores table migration is already created, just has the basic construct needed. And then I have the seeders, which is the store seeder, does not have anything, as well as the factory. So these are the things to get started for us. I have the store factory as well. We already had the factory for the user. Now we have the factory for the store. So let's start with creating the migration needed. So first thing first, I'm just going to have basic things to get started. I might create multiple pivot tables needed for, let's say, or at least additional tables created for capturing the address of the tables, or even images or the cover picture, let's say, of a, or cover pictures of a store can be captured within a different table. So to start with, I'll just have the basic things. Maybe I can just say tiny text or something for this, tiny text, and I'm gonna call it name. It's always good to verify whatever I'm creating with the implementation, so that there is no disconnect in terms of whatever I have created. Let me go and check the migration which I have already created, so that I can reuse those things. So I have a string which is going to be unique, so maybe I'll just do that. I'm just going to have it as string with 30 as the number of characters allowed for my store, and then I'm going to keep it as unique name for my store name. And then I can have text, which is for more to capture the details of my store. So these are the couple of things. So this is the first thing to start with, but then I also need to have a mapping of who is the user who's creating this table. So for that, I'm going to have the constraint set for constrained against, or at least the foreign key has to be mapped against the user who's creating. So I will just say foreign ID of owner ID. I'm just going to call it owner ID, because that's the user who's creating it. Instead of user ID, I'm going to use owner ID, and it's constrained for the users table. And then maybe I will not do a cascade. I can do a cascade update, cascade on update, but then not a cascade delete. Maybe I'll keep the restricted delete then. So I'll just call restricted on delete, so that store is, let's say if I try to delete a user, then the store should not get deleted. Instead, it should say there is a store already existing for this user, and you should be careful in deleting the user. So that's the cascade restrict on delete which I have kept. So the store is not destroyed when the user is getting destroyed. So that's a bit about what we need to create for the stores. So that is done. So we are ready to migrate this, but then let's also create those seeders needed to maybe send some of the stores which is already created. So for that, I'm going to go to the store factory and then include the name and the, I think I will also need the owner ID, or maybe not in this one. So it's only needed when I create the database. Okay, so name is going to be fake. I'm going to fake that. This faker name is going to be maybe a text which has maybe a number of characters, limited number of characters. So maybe let me check once. Faker. Okay, I can maybe call, because okay, I can maybe just use something to randomly generate right now. So there is something called as company available. I'm just going to use that. So that's one part. Even the owner ID I can pass here itself, because that's more of an association which I need to create. Who is the user who has created this table? For that, I can just use user dot from all the users. I'm just going to use a random number of users, and maybe this mapping might go for a toss, because I also need to see whether the user is okay, this is fine, because anyway I'll be passing this, or maybe I can even pass this. It needs to actually pluck all the users, so maybe I can do a conditional check here where let's keep this like this for the time being, because we need to rightly map the user if he's not a store owner. All user, all random. So that's going to pick up all the random from the users table. It's going to pick up, but ideally it should be the store creator. So maybe we can even pass this or attach him as a user. So I'm just going to keep it just like this for the time being. Let's revisit this once we implement it to some extent. So this is my owner, and then maybe also the details I'll just capture. This dot faker, and then maybe I can have a paragraph defined for that. So this is my store factory definition, and then if I can start building the seeder. So we had the user seeder where we had already created some users assigned with the role of store owner. So ideally these are the users whom I am interested in to assign maybe. So but maybe I will get rid of this. We will only create the store admin as well as the user when we are creating the table when the store, let's say. So I'm just going to get rid of those two things and go to my seeder. And this is where I'm going to create a couple of stores right now. So maybe to get started, let's seed our database. So I'm just migrating. We did not have the stores. Hopefully, yeah, our store would have been created now. Let's check that once. Refresh, and you have the stores with the owner, name, and all the fields available right now. So you have the owner, details, created it, updated it, all available. So stores is created. Now is the time to actually create some data there. So let's go to our seeder. First thing first, let's add our seeder over here. Store seeder class. So seeder is created, and now if you try to seed, it should generate those users. So if like whatever we had created here, maybe we can grab those users, whatever I had deleted. So these are the two store admin as well as the owners we created. Maybe grab those users and move it to store seeder user. So idea is that we are going to create the user and associate some stores for him. So that will be the general flow in when, let's say, you create, in this case it is like I'm going to create 4 users, but maybe I'll just, for this time being, I'll just create a couple of users instead of this 4, one user, and then associate one ID for him, which is a user profile, and assign him already. We are only anyway assigning these users as store owner or a store admin. So let's create the stores. So I'm gonna create something called as fashion stores to start with. Fashion store. So creation is pretty straightforward. All that I need to do is store, then call the factory which is already there. So I hope store is available, store accepts, then access the factory, and then maybe pass the number of count of stores needed. I'm just going to create one store, and then I'm going to do something to attach the user. So before that, this is just going to create a store right now, but then I need to also associate that store with the owner. So for that, I think that's one thing. Maybe I need not have those, that because association is already happening through the attach. Okay, it's going to happen through the has. So maybe I don't need this within the seeder. This is not making much sense to me. So I'm going to go back to my star and then create this, remove this, because anyway this input is going to go from the seeder itself. So let's go back to our store seeder, and I'm going to create a store. Even before that, let me go to the store and then have the fillable parameters integrated, which is for let's say mass filling some of the fields, mass assignment you call it. So some parameters already coming in, I can do a mass assignment. So I'm interested in doing a mass assignment for name as well as details, because these are just basic details. I don't think there is any security issues with these things. So that is that is created. Now is the step where I can have the association done. So I need to assign who's the owner of the owner. So for that, let me create a dependency or an association function. I'm just going to call an owner, and we know that a store owner can have a store can have one owner. At least that's a kind of design I'm creating here. So I'm just saying this store belongs to the user and I know that the ID which we had created is owner ID instead of user ID. If it was user ID, you're going to I don't need to say anything over here. It's just user ID itself by default. But then because I mentioned it as owner, I'm just passing this as the foreign key, which is owner ID. So our association to the owner is right now created, and I can now use this. Also, I need to make sure that I'm including the owners over here as well. So because it's going to be let's try something. I can just say this is where we are creating the mapping for the stores. So these are the stores for those. So if users has stores, then I'm doing that over here, and I can say return $this. So he will have many stores, has many. So I can just say store class, and then also pass the owner ID, which is the foreign key which we had set. So this is basically what the association is, that you have the store who has which belongs to a user who is actually the owner. So I'm just calling it as owner, and also within the user model I can just say the user is having multiple stores, and then has many stores through owner id. So that's how the mapping is. So we have created the assignment within these two. So using this, we can now go to the store seeder and then create this. We already have created this store, and I can now have the assignment done, like I was talking about has dependency. So I go to the store seeder, and this is where that store is getting created. My first store is getting created over here, and this is where I am having maybe this admin part. I can just get rid of right now because we don't have that dependency yet created. So I have the store owner who is associating a role, and now I can just say the store owner has this fashion store. That's it. So this is where it gets associated with this user. So I already have the user table, and this will create one entry in the stores table, and it will also associate this created user as we are only going to have one store owner anyway that we can check in the database after you do this seeding. So whatever is happening is I'm creating a store which is called as a fashion store, and then creating a user, creating a profile for him, like more details of the user, and then also adding him to the store so that the store gets associated with this user. That's a mapping happening here. Also, I'm assigning this user's role as store owner because he's not anymore a customer. So that's another additional thing happening. So with this, maybe we can create the first store and see what goes on there, because we already have in the database seeder, we have the store seeder set up. So now it should ideally seed, at least create one user profile, add one store, as well as associate that user with the store, and then assign these roles for him. So let's do migrate and see. So we can simply do it by PHP artisan migrate fresh seed. So it clears or drops every table which is already existing and creates all of these and seeds the data. I'm gonna do that. Hopefully it does not throw anything on me. It's done. So let's go and check our database. So stores, at least we are seeing one store created through this, and we have users also created. Hopefully we need to check for which user the role is being associated. We should only be seeing one user with the store owner 3. So you can always check that in the model has roles, and you can see it is user number 14 who's having role id 3. So that should be our store owner. So that's also created. So I guess we can, if you got to go to the store, you can see owner id 14 is associated. So that is already done. Our migration is already done. This is taken care. It's pretty good. So that's the first step. We created a store, and then we associated a user against that. We can again maybe create multiple stores and users now again, I think. So I'm going to create a luxury phone store right now. This is a fashion store which we created. Now the system is going to try to create a luxury phone store, which is more like the Apple and the Samsungs of the world. Phone store. So luxury phone store I'm creating. Again, it's the same code, pretty much like you create a factory. Store is just created, and then next step is that more or less the same, but I'm going to do one more thing here, because a user can have multiple stores, or so I'm just going to say another store which is like a budget phone store, where you get all of those cheaper phones of the world coming from different markets, the cheaper markets. Affordable, maybe I should not call it budget, but yeah, budget is also called. We can also call it maybe affordable phone store. But then these are two stores, and then I can just say this is again creating a user, but we need association with the luxury phone store. And so it's very simple. You just need to call it, maybe you can pass it within an array, I guess. Let's try both. Let's say I am going to create a user who's going to have these two stores. So this is how it's going to work. So fashion store and a luxury phone store and budget store. So if you again do a migration now, PHP Addison migrate fresh seed, that's also created. Go back and check. You must be having 3 stores right now, but it's associated to the same user 15. So this is the idea. You have 2 stores created and association is with user ID 15. So that's also created. Let's maybe try as association. I don't know whether it will accept an array. If that's the case, then you can even pass it as an array, but I'm not sure about it. Just gonna try that, and then because it's already giving an error, we can't accept. So maybe association has to be like earlier, I don't know, comma separated. Also it's accepting a factory, so I think it can only accept one at a time. So this is already taken care. So you have the luxury store as well as the budget store also created within the system. This is the first step, and maybe we can do a couple of more things before we go to the view to the controller to create some of the things. These are all creation steps. So maybe within that design, if you look at it, there is one thing missing over here which I need to add, which is more like there is a check which needs to happen. Maybe I'll do that over here, and that's what we are going to include in between these 2 steps, which is going to be a check to the user. Maybe I'll create it as a block and call it check as a middleware check, and that's going to be called as is store owner. So this is an extension to whatever we were doing earlier, where create is fine. Anybody can come and create a store for himself, any kind of user. So we are not restricting anybody from creating any stores within the system. But let's say after I have created a store, so there is a middleware check over here. Maybe I can delete this, maybe that can remain, but then I'm going to include one middleware check over here to see whether the user is really owning that specific store or not. Like whatever ID, I can just pass any ID and then say that's my store, but then idea is that there should be a check in between which says whether this user is really owning that or not. So that's a check. That's the middleware I'm going to create. So we already have created the store. I think once we start integrating this with our controller is when I will include this middleware. Okay, middleware. So that's a middleware. So one of the things I'm right now going to do is create some more users who are going to be associated as the store admins who can manage the store. So also I'm going to do that right now. So whatever I'm going to do is the store creation step is happening here. I'm going to associate some users when the store creation step is happening as the store admins. So for that I'm going to create a table which is going to be a mapper table. So I'm going to create a migration called PHP Artisan make migration, and I'm going to call that as create store admins table. So that's my migration, which is more needed to create a mapping for a user who's an admin, store admins. So I'm just creating that. That should create me the store admins migration. All that I'm going to have here is nothing but table with foreign key foreign key set, which is going to be the user ID, or maybe it's going to be a user ID, and this is going to be constrained on the users table. Again, if this user is going to be updated, it should have an update happening to even the table. So I'm just going to say cascade on update. That is fine for me, but then I am going to restrict if the user is associated with, let's say a store, then I need not delete him. So I might have to do a check before I disassociate him, and only then make delete this user. So that's a check I'm going to keep. Also, I'm also going to pass the table foreign ID, and this is going to be on the store. So I just need to say store ID, and then I say constraint on the stores table. So this is the mapping table, which is it's more a pivot table here we call it, where cascade on update and maybe again restrict on delete, restrict on delete. So this is what the check is all about. So this is the mapping table, and this does nothing but more than accept those users as well as the store IDs and then manage the dependencies between both. So I'm gonna migrate even this. So all that I need to do then is to do a migrate fresh seed. So that's also migrated. If I go to my table, one more table should be created, which is store admin. So this table is going to manage all the stored admins. So let's go back to our database seeder, or at least the store seeder, and let's associate that users to this. So it's very simple. Again, the creation is happening somewhere here, and then I can just do this create anyway had to happen. So we, even with factory it is creating, so this create step is needed. And before the creation we are going to have the user attachment happening. So I say as and has attached. So every pivot will have this has attached done. If it is not a pivot table, then you do has, which will associate the dependency if it is within the same table. So a has attached is what you need if it is a pivot table association. So I mostly prefer this has attached still. And we already have the user creation step happening. Maybe we can pick that up, which is more like this, in the association to the store admin happening here somewhere like this. So let's go back here. We already have this is all store owners thing. Maybe we can grab one thing which was creating a user and then use that. So this is where that user creation step is happening, and then making it as maybe I can change it to, maybe I can change that to delete this. Okay. So each step assignment is happening here. Maybe that's also fine. Create step is happening here. I think one step, whatever is missing, create each user assignment as store admin. It should be. I guess something is amiss here. It says syntax unexpected. I don't think I need this. Yep. So this is done, but then I don't need this create step because this has accepts factory instead of the created object. So I need not have this create happening right away here. Instead, let that happen when the association is happening. So I'm just getting rid of that create, because has this one accepts a factory. So as soon as I do a create, the factory is actually giving me the object of the created store, but I actually need a factory to be passed to. So this is actually nothing but a fashion store factory that you're passing. So but it can be, but ideally it is nothing a store that, but then association is happening through the factory, because the create step is somewhere happening here. So all of this is going to happen together with this create. So that's what this fashion store is now getting associated with a store admin. So maybe I can even increase the number of users created as store admin to 2, and each one is going to create one. I guess the user profile we might have to check. So there is two users, two user profiles must be created here, and that's a has mapping. So it is going to loop through, I guess. That's what my assumption is, but we can always verify whether it is mapping against the same user profile or not in the database. So this is done. Similarly, we can have the users created for has attached users created for even these two stores. So I have now a luxury store created. Now I can have the create step as well as the has attached step. So creation is happening here, and I can just say has attached. Okay, I just has attached, and then within that this user creation happening. So that pretty much takes care, I guess. So similarly to two users even here, again one more step over here. Luxury store, again I don't need the create like I mentioned the last step. It should be a factory than an object. And even for this budget store, let's associate some users. So it's very simple, like know it's pointing to the mapping table, and have the has attached dependency added. It's all dummy users getting created right now because we are using faker within the factory. So even this is created, get rid of create. Now you should be having the user admin store admin association also happening. So now let's do a migration because we have the stores created, the store admins created, and the store owners as well created. So let's do a migration. It should ideally create more number of users. Right now through an exception it says store users missing. That means we had association for an owner, but we don't have an association for the users within the store table. So we might have to go back to the user table and create something called as a function users, and then do that mapping over here. Return $this belongs to many user class. It's through the store admins table. So that's a dependent that's the pivot we had created. So we need to point to the pivot as well, like then it identifies which is the dependency it needs to look to. So it is a belongs to many dependency. Let's also go to the users table and create the stores. Okay, we already have the stores. So then we also need to call another function to point to, maybe will this be enough? Let's say to dependency is shown already to a migration. It throws and says store users call to identified stored users. I'm just trying to change something. There are two kinds of scenarios here. There are stores with a user can have stores as well as user is associated with store as a admin. So that's not the case here. It is saying user store call to unidentified user store. One thing which might have to change here is, like I was saying, I go to my users and then this change owner store is the other change, like all the stores of the owner will be accessed through this. So let me go back and then change to dependency. I need to point to the specific store, the dependency, or at least the relationship over here. So I need to say store owners when the store owner is getting created. So both places. So ideally this should resolve it, I guess. So those two things are done. Let's see whether it can migrate now. Still has an issue. Store users, I think I changed something in the stores table. Let's revert that. Okay, I don't have the users dependency over here, so that's what I need to create now. So this is my function, and I just say users, and then have the return dollar this, and then I say belongs to many user class, and then point to the relationship, which is store admins. This is more for the store admins dependency. Store admins. Let's check once. Now we did all the changes. Maybe we can, after this is done, we can, okay, this is working. So some changes was needed because we were having couple of users working as either a store owner as well as store admin. So that's the reason. Anyway, we had to create within the store a users, because it had to be called as users because actually these are store admins. When we are calling them users for only for migrating, or at least for seeding, and these users are nothing but store admins. I cannot call them store admins over here because there are some constraints or some steps that still needs to be done in Laravel for the seeding to happen. So that's the reason I'm calling it as users. And one other part which did not work for us was this users had a reverse dependency in user table as stores, because if we had stores, then it was always trying to identify the reverse relationship, which was users. So that's the reason we had to call it as why am I having users here? It should be at least stores. I don't I think I'd kept the relationship the reverse way, because within the users I was calling users, but these are actually nothing but stores. So stores is nothing but the owner stores. Maybe I can, because I removed that, let's try once more. I think it will still fail. I'm just going to call this stores and then go back to my the seeder, store seeder, and then going to get rid of whatever we did here, just as a verification step, because I think I set the dependency wrong there, just to verify that if it does not work, we'll revert it. So this is done, and then if I do a migration now, that to work. So okay, that's good, because I don't need to then specifically say as it has owner stores or something. But then definitely if you need a different dependency to access it, let's say all the admin stores or something, then those are nothing but owner stores. So if you rename it, then you might have to point it to the right dependency, or at least the right relationship. So you know that the tables, 3 tables are created. There are different users associated as admins, like 112233 means 3 users are created. Also, let's check whether they are 16, 21, 21. So these are the owners, and admins are 14, 15, 17, 18. Maybe we can just check once for this 14 and 15 whether the user profile is duplicated or not. So 14 and 15 are different. So even the one I was talking about earlier, where it might, whether the profiles will be duplicated or not, but then it's creating unique ones. So that's good. So even this is taken care. We have the some stores already available. Now let's start with the view controller side.